Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Massive news for the South Carolina Gamecock fans coming out of the transfer portal Wednesday morning, as it sounds like former Arkansas running back Rocket Sanders expected to commit to the South Carolina Gamecocks. And about 10 days ago, we made our wish list for the South Carolina Gamecocks in the transfer portal, and the running back position was at the top of the list, and Rocket Sanders was the player at the top of the list. This is a massive get for South Carolina, and many South Carolina fans know I was really critical of Shane Beamer and the staff in terms of what they entered the 2023 season with in terms of the running back room. I mean, DeCarrion Joyner, former wide receiver, plugging him in at the running back spot. Juju McDowell, kind of a former scat back. And then you had Division II transfer Mario Anderson. And you looked at that running back room, and most South Carolina fans knew, like, that's not an SEC caliber running back room from a talent standpoint, nor from a depth standpoint. And Shane Beamer getting really proactive in this cycle of the transfer portal, fixing that. And you have Oscar Attaway from North Texas, who's a very quality running back coming in. And now you land arguably the best running back in the transfer portal in Rocket Sanders. If you're a South Carolina fan, you're heading into that 2024 season with a lot more optimism in terms of what that run game is going to look like. You go back to 2023, 2.9 yards per carry for the South Carolina offense. That was 129th in the country. You're expecting that number to improve meaningfully with how they've improved this running back room. Going to get into Rocket Sanders, then talk about a few other targets for South Carolina in the transfer portal. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. A special shout out to the South Carolina fans. You guys have shown a ton of support as this transfer portal window has opened. I'm going to be trying to do my best keeping you guys as updated as possible with all the moves for the South Carolina Gamecocks. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Rocket Sanders. And this is a guy I'm fired up for. Like, you go back to the 2022 season, this was not only one of the best running backs in the SEC, he was one of the best running backs in the country. Over 200 carries for 1,400 yards, average 6.5 yards per carry. And I think the thing that you love most about this is he can do that and have that production in the SEC. Then you look at how he might fit this Dow Logan scheme in terms of that outside stretch zones. I love that fit. I mean, get him kind of being a one-cut running back. He's 240 pounds. I mean, getting downhill, being physical. And when it comes to hitting that breakaway run, I mean, he has a ton of speed. This is a guy that ran an 11.31 coming out of high school. There was a reason he was one of the more coveted prospects in that recruiting cycle because he was a big body that's extremely fast. And another thing that I think gets, kind of forgotten about with Rocket Sanders is because of the production as a running back is so good. He's a phenomenal pass catcher out of the backfield as well. There was time he was recruited as a wide receiver to a lot of Power 5 schools when he was coming out of high school. And you take a look at the receiving numbers, 50 catches for over 400 yards as a running back. He's also an extremely good threat out of the backfield. And that's a conversation that not a lot of people have in terms of running backs at the college football level, but something that not a lot of running backs can do. But when you have a running back, that can be a weapon out of the backfield, and you get him in man coverage with the linebacker. That's how you can hit some explosive plays. Sanders certainly brings that dimension to this South Carolina Gamecock offense. It seems like a really good scheme fit. He's a guy that can do a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, this is one of the most talented running backs in the country, coming to a program in South Carolina where they needed talent in that running back field. And you look at what this running back room is going to look like heading into 2024. Rocket Sanders is going to be the guy. He's going to be the one that's getting 20-plus carries a game. But you have a guy like Oscar Attaway, who's coming in from North Texas, who I like his game a lot. Then you have a guy like DJ Braswell, who also is a guy that has some absolute burners, 10-7 coming out of high school, guy that I thought would maybe get some more work in 2023. You look at this running back room in comparison to 2023, you're feeling a lot better if you're South Carolina in terms of the talent and depth that's in that backfield. Massive pickup for the Gamecocks. And I think one of the things that is worth noting for South Carolina fans is last year, I think Shane Beamer, for lack of better terms, kind of got caught with his pants down a little bit in terms of the transfer portal. He had a lot of his top players leave through the transfer portal and wasn't really able to replace a lot of that production. It seemed like late in the cycle, they were trying to get bodies in on the offensive line and at the running back room to kind of make up for what they lost in the portal, and they weren't really able to do that at a high level. This year, you're seeing Shane Beamer and the staff get really proactive. And we're getting our top targets on campus early. Guys like LT Overton, Rocket Sanders were on campus last weekend, and you're locking up these commitments, right? You take a look at a guy like Rocket Sanders, difference maker in the transfer. Oscar Attaway is going to provide extremely good depth in that running back room, something South Carolina did not have last year. And then you go get a guy like Jared Brown from Coastal Carolina, who we talked about a couple days ago, is a difference maker in terms of yards after the catch and what he can do in space. And so you're already looking at this transfer portal class as we sit right now, only a week into the transfer portal, and saying this roster is slowly getting better. And you know Shane Beamer's not done. He was at the airport, at midnight, picking up a guy like LT Overton. He's invested in using the transfer portal to supplement and upgrade this roster. And what's exciting for South Carolina fans is this is a roster that's going to have a lot of young talent injected into this program. But the best way to supplement young talent is getting experienced guys like Rocket Sanders or like Oscar Attaway or Jared Brown, who've produced at the college football level, to come and supplement some of the talent but inexperienced guys on this roster. So if you're South Carolina, you're really excited about what Shane Beamer is doing in the transfer portal. I want to talk about a few other targets for South Carolina. We already talked about a guy like LT Overton, who, when you get the first visit, that puts you in a good spot. That shows that LT Overton and his older brother are really considering South Carolina. So you like where you stand for a guy like LT Overton potentially. And then you had a guy in quarterback, A.J. Swan, coming over from Vanderbilt on campus earlier this week. And when you look at A.J. Swan, I don't think the numbers quite do him justice in terms of what he can be as a quarterback at the college football level. There's a reason he's a top 20 quarterback available in the transfer portal, a top 100 player in the portal. He's a guy that has a lot of talent. Was an Elite 11 dude coming out of high school, 6'3", 200 plus pounds. And he's a guy that has a big arm, has a big body, can use that body to extend plays. Vanderbilt just didn't have a lot of talent. And I don't know how many quarterbacks are going to come into that Vanderbilt offense and put up extremely good numbers. But when you do turn on the film of A.J. Swan, started a lot of games as a true freshman and flashed that arm talent. I mean, there's not really a throw on the football field that he can't make. And I think having a quarterback with that kind of arm talent is massive. And yes, the decision-making, the accuracy needs to be cleaned up. But there are a lot of quarterbacks that are starting at Power 5 schools that don't really allow an offensive coordinator, an offensive play caller to really have a full playbook because the arm talent is just limited. And there's certain throws that they can't make. A.J. Swan's a guy that the whole playbook's open in terms of what throws you're going to ask him to make. Now he just needs to get more polished up. The accuracy needs to get dialed in. The decision-making needs to get dialed in. Being surrounded by a little bit more talent and having hopefully a very good run game, A.J. Swan could come in and be the starter in 2024. And that's not me necessarily knocking a guy like Lenore Sellers. I think they just needed some competition and depth in that quarterback room as well. When you take a look at what that quarterback room would look like heading into that 2024 season without adding a guy like potentially A.J. Swan, it's Lenore Sellers, who I'm really excited about. Lenore Sellers. I think I'd be comfortable with him starting in 2024. But after that, it's true freshman Dante Reno, who's coming in, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And then Luke Doty, who's been playing a lot of the wide receiver position. Like that, if you looked at that quarterback and they don't add a quarterback through the transfer portal, that's not a quarterback room that you're having a ton of confidence in. Going out and getting A.J. Swan, not only adding some competition for that quarterback one role, two guys who are really talented in Lenore Sellers and A.J. Swan, who are both young, but it also adds some much-needed depth, what you need. So A.J. Swan, I get the numbers aren't going to excite South Carolina fans massively, is a guy that would be a really nice addition to South Carolina. And the last guy, and this is one of my favorite players in the portal, excuse me, Kyle Canard, coming over from Georgia Tech. Now, you're in it for a lot of other programs want Kyle Canard, right? Florida State had him on an official visit this weekend. Top 50 player in the portal, the number 5 edge player, and for good reason. He's 6 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss in that 2023 season for Georgia Tech, and he's a guy that not only is a great pass rusher, but he's also really good against the run. And South Carolina continuing to try to get those kind of bodies into that front seven. Kyle Canard would be a massive, massive addition and probably a day one starter at that edge position for South Carolina. He's one of the more coveted players in the transfer portal, I think to round it out, those are a few names that South Carolina is targeting right now. But what you're seeing is that South Carolina and Shane Beamer, they're not going to sit back. They're going to be proactive in this transfer portal cycle. They're going to go out and get their guys. And I'm really excited to see what Shane Beamer ends up doing in this portal cycle. He's going to get aggressive. He's already had a ton of talent on campus. Really excited for it. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.